up, everybody? Welcome to Office Hours, the show where we explore how video interacts with production, storytelling, B2B businesses, and organizations to help them connect, grow, and thrive in 30 minutes or less. Today, we are joined by Claire Jordan, Executive Creative Director at Proof, an advertising agency whose mission is to free brands to become the truest, boldest versions of themselves. By using what's in the way to find a better way, Proof helps companies discover their core strategic truth and translate that into creative ideas that connect with consumers. Their work helps brands on the brink of something bigger, whether it's scaling from regional to national, standing out in highly competitive sectors, or navigating a fast-changing digital landscape with purpose-driven strategies.
You did
Claire
it.
and Ben, what's up? That was a mouthful.
It was one breath, and I will say kudos to you for nailing it in one take.
Thank you.
I could tell you were reading it, though, just so you know. He was supposed to
Thank
memorize
you.
that for you, Claire. I'm sorry. This
Next
is your
time.
first experience here that this is.
That's actually my first, that's me attempting to be very professional. That's my first reading, like for anybody. So I hope
That's true.
that you
Usually
feel
it's
honored,
like, hey,
Claire.
tell us who you are.
I feel
Yeah.
very
Yeah,
honored.
you did a very formal intro. No, seriously, thank you so much for being here. This is awesome. It's so cool. This is cool. We do these every week. We like to get people on that are in the industry, talk a little bit about kind of where our jobs kind of intersect and things that we're seeing and things that you're seeing and things that are happening in the industry. But it's the first time that we've had somebody from an advertising agency on. We typically don't do that. So
A couple advertising agencies out there.
There's a
so
lot,
I'm happy to be the first.
but it's cool to have you here. The first thing we want to know is just, we want to get a little bit of your story arc, like your career arc, how you came in to be where you are, a little bit about the agency that you work with, and kind of what you're doing right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it all started in Austin, Texas, and it's still in Austin, Texas. But yeah, I grew up in Austin. I went to UT. There's a program at UT called the Texas Creative Sequence, and
Oh, yeah.
that leads you in one of two pathways. I took the copywriting pathway, worked at GSM for several years before moving to New York City, worked for some big shops there, decided the New York life wasn't for me forever, so came back to Austin, found Proof not long after that. And it's just, advertising, it's not a 40-hour-a-week job.
For sure.
So Proof is kind of a unicorn in the way that we have a little work-life balance. And I think, that's kind of happening in the industry at large a little bit better now. But yeah, that's how I ended up at Proof and in the role of ECD about 2 years ago.
2 years.
Yeah.
Okay. Talk to us about Proof. What's going on over there?
Yeah, Proof. We are a full service ad agency. There's about 50 of us, $100 million in billings and about 13 clients. We work with about 8 to 9 of those, rotating throughout the year on any given day. My team I lead the creative department. And there's about 12 of us, and we're kind of a mixture of some writers like me, some art directors, and then also some non-traditional creatives. So guys who kind of do what you guys do as far as like the editing and AVs. We have some digital gurus that help us with all things digital, and so that we can do a lot of in-house production of those items, social, digital, that kind of thing. But yeah, we do it all from your old-fashioned broadcast television all the way down to organic social.
That's crazy. Trae, you got your answer. This is what you wanted, and I told you not to put that question in. I specifically had him remove a question about like volume and how many clients you have, and I was like, that's inappropriate to ask. But he was curious, and that was actually, you guys are a lot bigger than I thought.
Well, and I didn't know the answer to that question until he put it in the question box, and then
I had to pull it out. I was like,
I
you
had to
can't
figure
ask
it
that,
out.
dude. Don't ask
So
that.
good for you.
Yeah, cool.
I was kind of wondering because like I was hoping you could explain in your executive creative director role, what is that like internally? Like, how do you manage creativity and how does that factor in externally? Like, are you looking at billings? Are you cognizant of that? Or are you just solely focused on creative output?
Pretty much creative output. But, I think one thing that makes Proof different is we're a very strategically led creative shop. So a lot of that comes with business goals and what is your pain point? What are you trying to accomplish? Is it growing within the category? Is it growing within a certain target market? So that's going to come to me in a briefing, and I'm going to kind of have an inkling before we start the creative work of what those goals are. And so all of the creative work will point towards that direction. But then from a day-to-day situation, ECD just means I am managing these creative teams and making sure that they have what they need, the support they need to really be set up to win, because I kind of know what everybody's gifts are, and like I want to put you on a project that makes you shine, because that'll make the project and the work work better, but it also make you more confident and grow in your role and that kind of thing. So a lot of it is, day-to-day management, but also we're a small shop, but technically speaking,
Sure.
I've worked at global agencies, and technically speaking, we're kind of a small shop. So I'm still copywriting on some days too.
Wow.
So, doing it all.
What does that client onboarding look like? Like, how are people finding you? What's the type of client that you're working with? Like, when they're coming in, are you guys going out and actively pitching business? Are people coming to you? Is it a mixture of all those things? And like, what does that engagement look like when it first starts off?
It happens all the different ways. Sometimes folks will hear about us and come to us, and it will not be a pitch process. It will just be a relationship, and we'll get to know each other that way. Sometimes it's folks who've never had an agency before, and we're kind of learning together and kind of helping guide a brand through what it's like to have an advertising agency. Or it could be a very established brand, an 80-year-old bank, and we're just trying to help them,
Nice.
turn the corner to, maybe a fresh start. So it kind of happens all those different ways. And the onboarding process is really us getting to know each other. Again, sometimes they have a really solid strategy and they just need really great creative to come out of that. Or maybe they need us to start all the way back at doing some research and doing some consumer testing, because we do have a really great strategy department, and we can really look into that, get under the hood, go, hey, you've actually been going after the complete wrong demographics. So let's talk about that. Or maybe it's a media question. If you've done a lot of old-fashioned broadcasts, that's not where your target is anymore, right?
So-
They're all on connected TV.
I don't want to stop you, but I kind of want to stop you right there. So what happens when you have something like that, like a legacy brand or somebody that's been around forever and they've been doing things like this forever, and they come to you for something totally different, like, hey, we want to do this, and you go, you know what? You don't want to do that.
Yeah.
You need to do this. Because this is something for us in dealing with like some of these associations or some of these people that have been doing things in this silo just the same way over and over again. For us to break them out of that is extremely difficult. And it's a very hard thing for us to do. So I'm looking for some tips.
Well, I'll say follow the money on that sometimes. Travel Texas is the tourism agency for the state of Texas, and that's one of our clients. And we've been working with them for about 5 years. And when they came to us, they were doing a lot of, traditional broadcast and print and that kind of thing. And their budget had just been cut, by a third. And they wanted the same results because that's their job, is to
Sure.
get those same results for the, it's a government-run agency. And we said all we had to do is show them, like, you can achieve all of these same impressions through connected TV and all these digital
just
outputs
moving it.
by just moving this around. And so they, that's that's like a no-brainer right there.
Yeah, that's just a different way to think about it for me. I've never thought about approaching it that way from a monetary standpoint. From us, it's just always like trying to prove up the metrics, and we're just trying to show them. But so much of that stuff feels, especially now in the age of everything being digital, that they're all just kind of BS. Like the metrics really don't. Like to push it all the way through to a conversion is so hard. It's still so hard.
Well, and
for
there's
us.
data fatigue for sure,
Yeah.
right? Like, what do you do with it? And I think you have to be careful what you do with it. Sometimes it makes a whole lot of sense to use it and to lean on it. And sometimes, you kind of have to put it to the side and take that risk.
Yeah. Were you going to say something? I didn't mean to cut you off, buddy.
No, I was just really curious about, speaking of data and analytics, like, how does your agency break that into departments? So you're focused on creative and you get these briefs, but where does the information come from inside of Proof? How do you guys do that research?
Yeah, we track everything, right? So sometimes we're optimizing, sometimes our media department is phenomenal, and they're, they have so many different dashboards that are tracking social sentiment, or they're tracking actual conversions and their time on site and how long people
But
engage.
you're doing placement and buys and all that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it's, a lot of that comes, we put things in market, and then we're constantly watching it and optimizing as we do that. So that's a big part of it. And then before that, the data, like I said, our strategy department might, glean data that will help us build that creative brief. So I think the data makes the most sense when you're trying to find the way to, point the ship.
Sure.
And then once you have pointed it, to kind of course correct as you go. That's for us.
That trickles all the way down. Like if there's something for people to take away, it's like, that doesn't mean, we see this all the time where somebody will do something for a month or so and they'll be like, nah, I don't know, that just didn't work. And they'll stop doing it. It's like,
It's
well,
interesting.
hold on. Let's
We actually we have a campaign in market for a client, and we were really itching to put it on our website along with some results. And our media department was like, hold up, it hasn't been a year. Give it a solid year.
Yeah.
And let's, because the metrics are going to make a whole lot more sense, and they're going to be a lot more trustworthy if you just give it the solid run of the media buy
For
and
sure.
give it a second.
So is the media buy part of every campaign that an agency like yours does? Because like for us as a B2B agency, a lot of what we do is like the production and the creative, and then we kind of hand over the product to the industry, the person, the marketing department, and they kind of handle everything else.
You know what? We do it all the ways. So we have some creative only clients, we have some media only clients, and we have some combinations where, like for Travel Texas, we do both media and creative. For some of our other clients, like Champion Energy, we're just doing the creative portion of that. So, and then we have some media only clients that I can't list off because I'm not in media.
Yeah, but I would also, but I would assume probably at your level that when you're handing that stuff off, there's probably there. It's because they've got another firm that's doing the buying or another firm
Yes.
It's not that they're like doing it in house.
Occasionally you'll see that, but yeah, a lot of times they just have, there's a fairly, I don't want to push buttons, but a fairly old fashioned, in my opinion, belief, especially in the, kind of when it was TV, print, and those kind of older media, like there was this belief that you shouldn't have your creative and your media at the same shop.
Yeah.
I think that's really changed because like we are so in lockstep now. And our media team brings us ideas and we give them ideas and we're working so
Sure.
closely. And again, like I said, we're optimizing all of the time. So the lag time it takes to go out of house with your media, in my opinion, is not the smartest way to go about things. But you still see it. Some people hold on to that belief that we need to have our media. So they'll have an entire media agency
Yes.
that they use separate of us, even though they could bring it with us. But, they just don't want to.
Well, this is interesting because it's been something that we've talked about a lot recently. There's been this and this is more with the people that actually bring stuff in house. So it's more for like the smaller groups. So we have this thing that's happening now to where instead of a client handing over to us their entire creative, where we would create their entire creative suite, we would do all of their design work, we would do all their graphics, we'd help them with like theming events, we would come out and film the events, we would do whatever. Now we're creating templates for them in Canva so their communications director can go do that.
Yeah. It's
And then
tough.
we see it get posted and you go, oh my gosh, that looks
would have been better.
crazy.
Would have been better if we did it. Yeah.
So I'm like, it's like, there's a part of me that's like, well, cool, I'm glad we're still working and I'm glad we still get to do this stuff. And it's just a change. And it's kind of like probably back in the day, like the TV guys that did E&G stuff, they always had a camera guy with them and they would go out and film and do interviews. Now you see them, it's like, if you're the reporter, you're also the camera guy. Yeah. And so I feel like now maybe the communications director is also the graphic designer. And it's, you know what I mean?
Efficiencies where you can and at what point, at what cost. Like,
so this is my question is like, are you seeing that? Like for us, it's just, and I don't want to overuse the term noise, but it's like, it's just so, when you go to LinkedIn and you go see all the generative content and you go see all of this stuff that's templatized and that's Canva and it all looks the same, like, what are we doing? Like, what's happening?
It's not a way to win, I'll tell you that. I mean, I think it's also tricky too, because I think there's a premium nature when something is done, when it's custom created, there's a premium nature to that. And you have to always think about like, what's your brand? If you're trying to sell something at a higher price point and you don't have a premium look and feel and your visual ID is not supporting that, then you're losing and it's going to send the wrong message to your customer. So I think that's kind of tricky. It's one of those things that I feel strongly about because there is, with the technology comes a consolidation of roles that you're talking about. And I don't want to err on the side of saying that, oh no, every commercial should still every 30-second commercial should still cost $1 million because that's a very old fashioned. I mean, we can't all be Verizon, right? But I do think that there is a diminishing return when you start, like you said, like having people, have multiple roles and trying to. It is great that you can hold a camera, but we're going to need a professional, and maybe it's. On social is a really different story than when you're trying to do something that's, for a more premium audience or for.
But I feel like those lines have gotten so blurred lately now that it's like the TV, the campaign that you see on TV versus what you see on social media, like that has gotten so gray that I don't know that you can have that big of a distinction. And that's what worries me is just the quantity of things that we are seeing now that are so similar. And that are so just, it is obvious that it's generative content. It's obvious that they're just feeling pressured to put things out. So they put things out, but we're just dumping more and more stuff out there. And now it's like just doubly hard to cut through all that. And so we have clients with much smaller budgets that are coming to us and go, hey, look, we want to show our constituents or our clients or our members that we really care. Now make me a bunch of templates that I'm going to throw into Canva. And you're like, okay, well, those two things that doesn't work.
No, and that's what I'm talking about is like, like, I think your visual identity says so much without saying anything
Yeah.
because it's just a visual connection. Consumers are going to see through all of that. We've been having a lot of conversation, obviously about how AI intersects with production, and we have never used externally facing AI voiceover talent. We have
Yeah.
for internal purposes, but I feel like I still haven't figured out how I feel ethically about doing that. There may be a time when I'll laugh at that and go, oh, now we do it all
Yeah,
the time.
of course.
I'm not comfortable with that yet, and we've been having a conversation about AI video production, and, we've used it to bring our own illustrations to life.
Sure.
We've used it in that kind of way. CES is one of our accounts, the Consumer Electronics Show.
Super cool campaign, though. I did look at that.
Oh, we have a new one coming out. It has just come out actually for the show this year, and it's beautiful illustrations that we could have done in AI. We did not. They're all hand done illustrations, but we did use Runway to bring them to life and to create video assets from them. So for me, that's my favorite use of AI. Now, I know you can do net new like lifestyle production with AI, and I don't. Look, maybe one day again, I'll see the use of that and then like the use case for that. I just haven't seen it yet.
No, we love it as a tool. I mean, for us to for quick edits or for, getting something out really quick or to help like with ideas, like to get stuff really, it's an amazing tool. The problem is that what we're seeing is just based on most of the clients that we deal with, some of the budgetary constraints that people have, they lean so heavily on it as their kind of sole source of creative. And it's really frustrating to be in the industry and just to watch it kind of slowly proliferate throughout like just this black cloud. And and I hate to be pessimistic about it because I like it, but it's the, I like the idea that people are more aware of design now. I don't like the idea of these tools being put in the hands of people that maybe don't necessarily really know how to use them. And the things that we're seeing from our clients is a little disheartening at times.
Yeah.
And so I'm not here to kvetch about that all day. I don't want to get into that.
So one more question I have is not on the topic of AI because I feel like we could talk about it.
I know, and I feel like it's all we ever talk about. I'm sorry.
I know. But so when I first started reading about proof, and it was like, I really liked the tagline, you're freeing brands to become the truest, boldest versions of themselves. And can you kind of talk about that and how that plays out in real life? Like, how does that work for an actual brand? Like, can you give a specific example of how that worked or that kind of growth that came from that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think just to give that a little context, we call ourselves a brand liberation agency because we think that every brand is constrained in some way. Like, even if you're rolling in it, killing it, like there's still untapped potential in that, and that can look different for every brand in every category, or even two brands in the same category. So again, that starts with like getting under the hood, doing the research, understanding what makes a brand truly special. And once you have that core truth, I think that's when you can go, okay, how do we translate that core truth into something really bold, really special, worthy of a place in the world, worthy of a consumer's time and energy? Why would they invite you to their social feed? Why, like, how are you going to earn that? And so I think starting with that philosophy, we've done that for several of our clients. And just to give an example, Sprinkles Cupcakes is one of my favorite clients and brands that I've worked on, and they're a very fun brand. I don't know if you guys are familiar with them. They started in California about 20 years ago. But when we started working with them, their social feed, they were primarily using social and paid social as their connection with consumers. It had to become very price point oriented. A lot of coupons, a lot of, they had started, I mean, the Kardashians love the Sprinkles cupcakes. Like they had been.
That's kind of wild.
Yeah, they had been
because like
featured in
they seem so
movies.
premium.
Yeah, so premium. And so they'd really kind of gotten away from that core truth of who they were. And so through a big strategy development, we came to the idea of this kind of liberation strategy, we call it, of like live life on the glam side. What does it mean to like get your pop culture roots back? And so we kind of reinvented their look and feel. So previously the way they were photographing their cupcakes didn't feel quite as premium to us. And so we like, okay, what if we film and what if we photograph these cupcakes like they're designer handbags? What would that look like? How would, so we would, instead of getting inspiration from other desserts in the category, we got our inspiration from Gucci and from high fashion and that kind of thing. So that really impacted the way that they showed up visually. It also impacted the kind of social campaigns they were doing. One of my favorites being, making sure we were really tapping into those culture moments. We did for the big release of the Eras film that came to theaters, the Taylor Swift's Eras film. We found out, our social team found out or knew because they were obsessed with her, that her favorite, cookie flavor is a chai cookie. And so we decided to do a chai cupcake flavor. We gave away a Sprinkles Era bracelet with it. We had, that was the big theme, and we released that with the film coming out. And so it just linked the brand with culture, and we continued to do that. Anytime there was the Emmys or the Grammys or all of these things, we would, do big campaigns based around that. So it was just, instead of saying, hey, 20% off on your next cupcake,
The cupcake cash. with
yeah,
every
exactly. Which people, because it's like not everybody can afford a Gucci handbag,
Right.
but everybody on a good day can afford a $7 cupcake.
Yeah.
So,
Well, yeah,
It's pretty awesome.
so anyway, we freed them to return to their pop culture roots. That was the story there, is like finding that constriction and what was in their way, and then how do we free them to become who they truly were.
Also, you said something really interesting in talking through that you're earning people's attention, which is different than just putting things out there so that they see them. And that's not something that we talk about enough, I don't think. And it's like when you're creating assets for people or working with them through these creative processes, like you're vying for their attention, you have to earn that attention. And so you have to do something that's worthy of getting that attention.
And honestly, because you can't afford not to. It sounds like I think sometimes clients, and I have to remind them because clients hear me challenge them and ask them to take a risk as if it's my desire to create something more beautiful or something more creative or something. But really the truth is you don't have Geico money.
Right.
You don't have AT&T money. Like you can't afford to not stand out. Because your media buy is not such that everyone's going to be sure to see it. Yeah. So it's like you honestly can't afford to be quiet.
That's a great takeaway. That's like
that's
that made this whole thing worth it for me. I mean, that's a huge takeaway. No, I mean, it's great. And I feel like that we aren't assertive enough about that with clients. And I also think that's something for them to really remember, whether it's in advertising or whether it's these associations we work with or whoever, like they have an onus to provide their members with the best service possible and to earn their attention and earn their trust and earn their, all of those things. And so they have to do that as well. And by not putting your best foot forward every time that you're doing these things, from, it being your social media ad to whatever it is, you're taking a little step back every time. You're getting a little bit
losing
further
a little
away
bit of
from that.
trust or losing a little cachet.
So how did you kind of come to this role? I know that you worked your way through a lot of different places, but philosophically, it sounds like you're very aligned with Proof's thesis. And how did you end up there? Did you work at Proof for a long time before you were like, oh yeah, this is totally me? When you got there, were you like, oh yeah, this is already me? Who came up with this idea to liberate brands?
That kind of positioning it's kind of interesting. So I actually worked with Proof in a freelance capacity for, I worked in agency life for a long time, and in New York is when I kind of got burnt out with that, 75 hours a week, sleeping at the office kind of thing. I'm like, I'm too old for that. So when I moved back to Austin, I freelanced for a long time, found Proof through that freelance relationship, and really enjoyed kind of the ethos there. Especially there was a bit of a change of ownership, and that created a little bit of space for me to step up into the role that I'm at now. And so about a couple years ago is when this idea of brand liberation, which was kind of came about. And really that came about not necessarily as a new idea, but we're not really explaining what we do in the best possible way. And so let's look back, and we just had our 15th year anniversary. So it's like, let's look back over the last decade and go, what have we been doing well and how have we been doing it? And so we kind of did to ourselves what we do for our clients. And that came up with this idea of that's what we're really good at.
It's amazing.
Is getting to the core of who our clients are.
It is amazing because that is an absolutely impossible task to ask a creative agency to do, or anybody that's in it, because it's
look inward.
Yeah. It's like the carpenter with the house that's falling apart. It's the hardest thing to look at yourself and go, you preach these things all day long and you're like, well, we're not doing that. What do we need to do to make this right?
Writing copy for my own website is the hardest thing.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Yeah. So that's hilarious that you guys took the time. Was that a conscious decision? Were you there for that part of the process to hey, let's look inside?
Yeah, we did. I think that was about 3 or 4 years ago. And then, it's funny. I never really had my sights on being an ECD, but it just kind of happened that way. Yeah, I don't know that I'd want this job anywhere else, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah.
Because I do feel like we're really, the owner of Proof is Brian Christian, and he's just really supportive of the creative point of view that I have. And we're we're a very tight knit
Yeah.
group. For a fully remote company, we are extremely tight knit. So, anyway, I think that makes all the difference.
Well, we, preach the virtues of video production all the time to our clients. So we try to get, our big thing is about value add in video, is that like if we're doing an event for you, make sure that we're shooting B-roll, make sure we're getting stuff for your social, make sure that we're doing all these things, right? Because it's such an important way to show who you are to people, to like continue to reinforce that brand. Talk to us a little bit about how you guys are utilizing video, what you think about the rise of short form content, how you're utilizing that, like kind of where's your head in this video space right now? Obviously, a 30-second commercial is kind of, the de facto standard, but outside of that, what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, it's the de facto standard still, I think I would say, but it's quickly shifting away.
Sure.
And it's interesting because even in a place like YouTube where people are consuming video like social content, but technically that would fall into your connected TV category. So it's kind of interesting. We have a lot of different partners that we use in Austin and outside of Austin. Most of our production happens in Texas, but I think for us, it's the placement is becoming so important because I think when I'm talking to a client and they're wanting to post video on their social feed every month, I can't charge them $500,000
Right, that's
for
right.
every
That's
social
right.
video, and they shouldn't pay that.
That's right.
And so I think because we all have a camera in our pocket, just knowing the context of what belongs where, and also again, what's your core truth, and are you a more premium brand? Are you a really fun social brand? Like, what is your space, and navigating that through video and what that video tells. And I think it's nice, to kind of have that layer of like, here's your premium video content, here's your social video content, and let's really build a video strategy around all of that, if that makes sense.
It totally makes sense because I've gone from telling people never to take their phone out of the pocket and shoot video for anything they're doing that has anything to do with the voice of their company, because that's somebody's personal, you're just doing this thing, to now we create these like virtual expos for people, and they'll have vendors that come in, and I tell them specifically, we want you to get your phone out and film that video because we want it to be like an intimate interaction with somebody. So we want you to do that. So it's just, to me, it's a constant evolution, and we're chasing down like, what's the next big thing? We found that the short form content is so much more powerful for us and for our clients than anything else, because they don't have they will never have the budgets for a 30-second commercial.
Absolutely.
It'll never happen.
No, and it's hard, and it's like trying to find that balance of like, I think too, one thing I do really feel strongly about is no matter what it is, what's the idea behind it?
Sure.
Right? Because, we're not really in the business of just capturing footage. We're in the business of telling a brand story.
Totally.
And so it doesn't, for me, you can tell it in a lot of different ways, and you probably should tell it in a lot of different ways, but you have to be able to back up and see the concept, the brand narrative through all of that. Because again, because of the budgets we're talking about, if it doesn't all align together, it's going to be fractious, and you're not going to get your money's worth. Because if this social video is telling a different brand story than this 30-second connected TV spot, then
there goes
we're
your
in trouble.
credibility. There goes everything. Yeah.
And they're just not
So do you have like a specific example that comes to mind when you're talking about this, like something that you've created this year that you've really loved?
I have a bunch that I don't know. I'm just kidding.
Let's think. Well, it's kind of two things that come to mind, and we just started a new client called Good Charlie, and it's an energy company out of Houston, and they bundle energy service with pet perks. 24/7 vet care. Like, it's basically taking a parody product, which is energy, and like pairing it with something that you care deeply about, which is your pet. And it's a really lighthearted, fun brand. It's very new. I have great hopes on the horizon for the work we're doing with them. They're a really great client, but we've just started in the social space for them so far. And so that really is creating handheld phone video. I mean, my team is doing it, and we're doing it with a very creative eye, but we're creating a lot of social videos for them, and they are created to look like social content, but compare that to, we're in the process of developing right now a full actual video brand campaign for them. And so that will include a 30-second video spot, a 15-second video. So, and it's like, what I think is important is that, we're going to have to look at the groundwork we're laying here, and as we're developing this new campaign, it's like,
Sure.
how is that gonna?
Especially if that one came first and that's kind of become like the
Yeah.
brand voice, those
Yeah.
the smaller ones.
Yeah.
That's interesting. See, we got to get
That's awesome.
all those energy brokers in Houston. It's just a different market down there.
But I can't wait to look that up. That's really cool. So your team is like filming social videos that you've thought extensively about. Like you're very creatively, you've made all the choices, and then they do it to make it look like
Consumer generated
like I just made
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, exactly. And we have our social team is great, and we do a lot of strategic planning. We have a social calendar, and the way that we approach social is when you see it, it looks very fun, and
Sure.
but there's a lot of thinking that goes behind it, and we have pillars that are meant to really chase down certain goals. And one of those goals is growth. And for that growth category, it really needs to look like something that you've just come across. And it doesn't, it's interesting because, polish, and as you guys well know, polish and really cinematic video doesn't necessarily play well in social. In fact,
Yeah.
it can have the opposite effect. And so, how can we make this look like native social content? And so that's one of the things we're trying to get better at and we do a lot of that in-house because, again, it doesn't make sense for us to go out of house.
Still get branded as promoted though, like on when it's a post. Like, does it still say an advertisement or does it
Sponsored.
just
If it's a paid
bot ad,
post,
yeah.
so it's like sometimes we'll boost those in a paid way. But if it's we also do organic social for some of our
okay.
clients, and so those just come up on their feed just as organic social does.
Well, Trae,
Yeah.
we're coming up a little past 30 minutes here, but there's a couple of big takeaways that I had today that I would like to
please
lay out.
let me know?
So the first that I'm taking back from this to like all my clients and everything I do and every day and every conversation I have forward is just this idea of intention, which you've brought up a lot. It's like be intentional about what you're doing and why you're putting this out there and put the thought into it. Don't create content just to create content. And we see a lot of that happening, but I hear you talking about all this intention that's put into all these things and all the thought that's going back through. And I think that's something that's super important to take away. The other thing you said that I already brought up once, but I felt like was just such a great soundbite is that this idea of earning people's attention. So we talk through cutting through the noise all the time. And we say all these other, but like you're earning their attention. You have to you got to care that like it's their time and you got to put something out there that's worth it for them to take their time to do it and don't take that for granted. And I think that's a huge takeaway. I think that should be a huge takeaway for anybody, even if you're just an in-house comms director that's having to do all this stuff and generate it yourself. Think about those things when you're putting that out there, that like you're asking somebody to take some of their time to look at this and to pay attention to what you're doing. So be mindful of that and put some intention behind it.
Yeah, take a risk.
Yeah, there's not
I
4
didn't
channels
say that.
anymore. There's not 4 options
4
out there.
million channels now. Trae, any closing thoughts? Any words of wisdom?
I would just
Any
add
big
like
takeaways?
the with your first point that you're saying, it was like be really intentional, put it out there, but also measure it, because I feel like that's something that other people will forget. No, it's okay to revise it, like measure it, A/B it, revise it, put something else out.
Yeah, if it doesn't work just immediately, it doesn't mean that it's wrong. It just means that maybe you need to tweak it.
And I think especially because every brand has to show up in social these days, like
Right.
they just have to. Social, when it comes to things, like a proper spot that is going to air, on broadcast or Connect TV or something. Obviously, we do a lot of testing before that runs, and we make sure that we vet that before it runs. There's a higher price point there; it
Sure.
deserves that. But I think in social, it's much more learn as you go. I mean, we're all taking. Everything's a risk, and obviously, you're going to try to make sure you are a good steward of the brand and don't do anything, American Eagle style. I think, but I think what we can do is know that as we produce content, we may find something of this series is not working. People don't like it or it's not gaining any traction.
Right.
And so let's just move on. And that's fine. And that's just a part of the learning as you go.
Love it.
All right, cool. One more question before we go. As a professional creative manager, what is one thing that we can do to preserve our creativity?
I would say if your job is your only source of creative fulfillment, you're doing it wrong. For me, went back and I got an MFA in fiction and I write every morning for an hour. I have a guy on my team who is a phenomenal costume creator. He makes these amazing monster costumes by hand in his garage. I have an art director who's a painter. I have one who is just, builds pianos and furniture and all of these things. So I just think if you're relying on your job for your creative fulfillment, it will disappoint you every day. So you have to get it elsewhere.
Okay.
And then it will feed your
Get it?
job.
I love that. This is the end of this week's office hours. Claire, thank you so much for
thank you
joining
so
us.
much.
Yeah.
Ben, thanks for making this hybrid. We're reaching through time and space to connect Houston and Austin. I love it.
Yeah, you're coming in next week, though, right? No, you'll be off site next
no.
week. Everybody's off site next week.
And all right.
Okay, buddy. We'll see you. We'll talk later.
Bye.
Yeah.